All right, so we're returning to open session. We had a brief executive session. First item on our agenda, well, I should say first, this is Monday, July 11th, meeting of the Plympton Board of Selectmen. All right, so update and discussion, North Carver redevelopment project, possible drafting of letter to Department of Housing and Community Development regarding the concerns. I had asked Liz to put this on the agenda. The plan that Carver has submitted is with the Department of Housing and Community Development for approval now, and the approvals are expected in August. And I just thought it might be prudent to have something on record where we could share our concerns with the project. Namely, mine is that the configuration of the trailer bays facing the residents on Montello and Heather's Path, and just if we had any other concerns too, bringing it to their attention early in the process so that maybe they could be considered, or some type of note in the approval. The thing is, we've got very little true power in the process, and all we can do is really make suggestions. And but if we don't make the suggestion, we're never going to get this the outcome that we want. So that's why I suggested it. So your thoughts? I
think it's a good idea. I appreciate you've taken the lead on all this, Christine, and I think that's great. And rather than jump in, and we should just channel back through you. So I think this is great.
Mark, would you be okay with us doing something like this, drafting a letter?
Most definitely, yes.
Okay. At this point, where we're still really early in the process, it might be prudent to just have this be from us and save some of our heavier hitters, possibly Kathy Lenatra or Old Colony Planning Council, to further down when we need them, rather than have them involved at this point. So I think that, we know what the concerns are, and we can certainly draft, Liz and I, a letter that shares what they are with Department of Housing and Community Development, and just ask them to make this, to consider our concerns as part of the approval of the plan. Does that sound like a reasonable plan of action? Okay. All right. So are you okay with, do you want to see the letter? Or are you willing to authorize Liz and I to work together on a letter and to have something go out sooner rather than later? Because I'm afraid I just don't want the plan to be approved while we're still working on a letter. It'd be good to get something into them relatively quickly.
I'm glad for you to go ahead. If there were time to just read it and offer suggestions, that would be great. But that could be
okay. Well, why don't we try to do something, have something together by the end of this week? We'll share it with both of you for comments and suggestions, and then plan to try to get it to the Department of Housing and Community Development maybe by Thursday of this week.
Yeah, let's do that.
Great.
Okay.
That's fine. And if you find it's a time buying, that I'm fine with you just doing it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
thanks,
I am
John.
too, but I think the turnaround can be a couple hours.
Christine, would it be helpful? Do you want me to put together a draft and then get it over to you, Christine, for further?
That'd be much faster. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Liz, very much. And you are completely up to speed with all of our concerns. So perfect. That sounds great. Okay. The next item on the agenda is Plymouth County Advisory Board. We need a member for and an alternate for FY23. This is, the meetings are down in Plymouth. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 meetings a year. Basically, it's voting the budget in the spring, and then there are other meetings throughout the course of the year as needed. So I've been the rep on this for the last couple of years. I don't know how long, but I would be more than willing to pass the torch if someone else is interested.
What exactly do they do?
They, Plymouth County, they have the OPEB that they manage. They have the mosquito control program. They have the program with titles that they get money back. And I think there's really, I mean, they're always looking for new ways to help us. They actually do have a program where they can do parking tickets. They can manage your the parking tickets. So for some of the larger towns, they do that. They're always looking for innovative ways to help the member communities, but it's not a heavy lift.
Is it nighttime or daytime?
Usually, it's nighttime, and it's usually on a Wednesday.
Wednesdays. Yeah. I've sat in on those in the past. Sounds like John's vaguely interested. I'm glad to do it as well if he doesn't.
I can do it. Wednesdays is a problem because that's the town property committee's meetings, but I'd be glad to do it, or maybe we could share it, Mark. I don't know.
Well, all right, go ahead.
One of you could be the alternate. If John wasn't able to attend because of his schedule, then maybe Mark could be the alternate.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion that the selectmen choose John Trainer to be our member, and Mark Russo as alternate for our representation on Plymouth County Advisory Board. Second. All right. Roll call vote. Mr. Trainer.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mrs. Joy. Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is the list of proposed transfers for the FY22 closeout. So Liz, you gave us a spreadsheet with—
Yes, and I sent around a further updated one late this afternoon. It had one minor additional change to it. The Finance Committee met earlier today, and they have approved all of these. This is our standard process for the end of the fiscal year to close everything out. Typically, the line-to-line transfers require a vote of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. So this would be your part of that process. As far as the line item transfers go, I don't see anything on the list that I sent out that really stands out. It's nothing that should be a surprise to anybody. A lot of it's more or less housekeeping stuff. Just as a quick example, the fire department transferring money from their SCBA radios line to the SCBA bottles line. Somewhere down the line, they had two different accounts created basically for the same purpose. So it's taking care of that. Otherwise, there was some for the police department wages. And again, we knew that was coming due to some of the unanticipated retirements and departures that we had to pay for. So there was nothing really out of the ordinary on there. Then separately from that, there are two other items on the spreadsheet that don't require a specific vote of the Board of Selectmen, but I think it's nice if you affirm it. And that would be two reserve fund transfers, which again, Finance Committee voted to approve earlier today. One is for financial audit. That was for the additional services provided by Lynch and Marini. And then the other one is for our legal budget line. And I just want to point out with both of these, just to use the auditing one as an example, there was additional money left in the treasurer collector's expense line and in the town accountants that we could have used to bring this amount down a little bit and then did the remainder from the reserve fund. But at the end of all of this, any unused funds, whether reserve fund or left in people's budgets, it all goes back to the general fund anyway. So it just seemed cleaner to have it come from one source. So that's why it might look a little bit high, but there is plenty of money being returned to the general fund. We did not spend close to what we appropriated for fiscal 22. There's a lot of money going back to the general fund, which should help us out for next year in terms of free cash and everything. And then the other one on here, we need to move some expenses from the fire department to the COVID account. They had a deficit in their salaries account to close out the year of a little over $82,000. Most of that was due to some of the anomalies created in scheduling with COVID and everything else. But I think our goal for fiscal 23, John and I are planning to meet with the chief later this week, and we want to implement a plan to ensure their success for fiscal 23, that we're having ongoing monitoring of the budget and ensuring compliance, and maybe even implementing some best practices or some steps. Like, what do we do if we get to one of these check-in meetings and we find out that something is over budget? How can we correct it? So working with them, I think, on that is going to be key. They're doing a great job over there, but there are a lot of unknowns in managing a budget like that, because you have people working if there's a storm or an emergency or anything like that. So just where there are so many variables, I think a little extra assistance in terms of budget management and compliance would be helpful for that department. And we want to make sure everyone's successful. So John and I are going to be taking that project on. And I think, as a matter of course, we might want the fire department and the police department to come before the selectmen, perhaps quarterly, and give an update of what's going on their department and an overview of where they're at with the budget at different points throughout the fiscal year. So if you're comfortable voting this, to approve the line item transfers and everything on the spreadsheet, that would be appreciated so we can close out the fiscal year.
I'm fine.
Are you okay too, Mark?
Yes,
these?
ma'am.
All right. So Liz, do you need us to make these votes line by line?
I don't think so. I think you can just vote to approve as shown on the spreadsheet prepared by the town accountant.
Okay.
And then we'll have the spreadsheet on record. We can even attach it to the minutes.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion that the selectmen approve the line item transfers to close out FY22 as provided by the town administrator and put together by the town accountant. Do you have a second? All right, roll call vote. Mr. Trainer?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. All right, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Okay, board goals for FY23 project and priorities list. Do you want to take the lead with this one?
Sure. So we have our standard projects and priorities list, and it seems like over time, things have been changing a little bit with that list, and it's become kind of a catch-all for all sorts of things, big and small. And I was wondering if the board was interested in maybe changing the format a little bit and setting one or two goals for the year that we could execute an actual plan for with different steps. And then maybe keep the projects and priorities list, but rely a bit more heavily on having department heads, board and committee chairs. Maybe we could get back to having someone come into every meeting that we have and give an update. That seemed to work well in the past. And that way you're hearing direct from some of these different people as opposed to having everything coming through my filter. So that was one thing. And then, but also looking at a creative way too. We don't want any of the stuff from the original list to get lost. So I didn't know if you wanted to even amend this further. I know I sent out a draft format for consideration. But maybe something on there, even if you wanted your own little section where if you were working on specific projects, just so that the rest of the board knew what everybody was working on, if you had particular areas of interest. But I just thought something a little more streamlined and a little more action-oriented, as opposed to just rattling through the list, might be helpful.
Liz and I had talked about this, and it made sense to me to have some bigger picture goals, what we really want to accomplish, and not have so many, but just have a couple of things that were measurable and that we could and actionable, where we could plan for and hopefully accomplish over the course of the year. So I'm fully on board with whatever we want to do with affordable housing, whether it's identifying a piece of property over the course of the year. Doesn't have to be super grand, but I think that we definitely need to get the ball rolling. And if we set it as one of our priorities, I think we have a better chance of making it happen. So affordable housing is something that's near and dear to my heart that I would love to have us focus on. John or Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Well, a couple things. The priorities and projects list hasn't been an evolving thing over many years, and I'm glad for it to keep evolving. I think maybe we're looking at two different things. One is maybe a list of all the projects so none get lost along the way. The other, though, which I think we're moving toward now, Liz is suggesting, and I highly approve of this, is being much clearer on our priorities. In terms of the housing thing, I think that's exactly right. That's probably a project that requires all of us. There's been a moderate amount of work already started on that in terms of identifying possible land acquisitions. And it's a crying need, and I think it's a really good one. The only downside of that one is, it's probably a multi-year thing. It's a big, huge thing. It needs unbelievable patience and persistence. But unless we get started, it's never going to get going. So I'm glad to see our lists evolve. I'm very glad to see us prioritize 2 or 3 things that we all know we're working on. And I like the one that's been chosen.
John, what do you think?
I have a couple of different things that jumped out at me out of this. One of the concerns I've had is because of the open meeting law, we are not able to just sit and chat about things that are somewhat nebulous, but direction, where we're going. Some things because we don't want to, in a sense, play our hand out. For instance, if we're talking about acquiring land and it's still early on and we're talking to somebody informally, we may not want that on the record. And then there's the smaller things, the things of what are we doing? I had suggested that we have as a piece of the Selectmen's agenda that each Board of Selectmen have a chance to sort of say, here's what I'm working on. And some of those things are little things. And I think that we still need a way of incorporating those little things so that we get a sense of where we're working and where we might touch base and where we can help each other. I really don't have a good sense of, Christine, other than I know you're working Carver, doing great work, and that's so important. I know Mark is working land issues, but beyond that, I'm not sure what's going on. Now, maybe it has to come through Liz, but if it comes through Liz, then we got to make sure that we understand. Oftentimes I'll update Liz and I'll never know whether that gets on to you guys. And maybe we need a more structured way of saying, okay, Liz, this is for passing on, if you will. But I am afraid of just losing the smaller details in the mix. So I would like to take a little more time and maybe structure this out a little bit more. One of the things also, I think the idea of having a department head come in is valid and is a good idea. But I think we need more structure for them. You know, sort of, I remember we had one person come in and she said, why, I wasn't sure why I'm here. So I think we need to say, you know, here's why we're chatting. You know, what are the issues that are facing you? Where can the selectmen help? What do you see as obstacles? Those type of things, so that we have a better idea of how maybe we can help them solve them or point them to other people who can solve them.
Mhm. Yeah, I liked the department head meetings as well. I would love to start that up again. And, you know, maybe we can provide a little bit more direction for the meeting so that they have an idea of what we're looking for from them, so that it's a productive meeting and we can help them, and if it's possible in any way.
Another part of that that may help the productivity on going back to that is having a very brief report, at most 1 page or even half a page from the department head, so that the meeting time itself is not used for presentation of information, but that's the time for questions and discussions. That the presentation of information is best presented ahead of time. And it doesn't have to turn into an onerous task for those who are asking to do it, not a multi-page report, but again, a half page or at most a 1 page report on what they're up to, what their department are up to, their concerns, and then our opportunity for discussion in open meeting.
I
Those
think
sound
this
like good
falls back on
suggestions.
you, Liz, because everybody's going to be differently versed in how to put that together.
Right.
And I think you're going to have to be the gate that says, you know, this is great, or we need more information, et cetera. So that when we do get to the meeting, like Mark says, we're using our time better.
Right. No, I like that idea. I can definitely work with everyone and make that happen.
Yeah, if we could structure out something that they fill in and then circulate it among us for comments, I think that'd be great.
Well, that's a good idea. Almost like a little template of
Yes,
sorts.
exactly.
And they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Why don't I put something together and circulate it to the three of you? And you can let me know if you like the look of it, or if you think it's missing anything, or, you know, something should be changed. And then we can have that be what we use.
Yeah.
So, John, did you like the format of the what Liz has proposed, with having some FY23 goals and then breaking it out in short term and long term?
I do like the idea of having new goals. And I would agree, no more than 5, and they should be very crisp. I know, you know, when I did this for a living, we always used the Kennedy Man on the Moon as the template of, you got to have a goal that everybody can relate to. And Man on the Moon was the way Kennedy did it. The goal was to increase the scientific involvement by creating NASA. That's really what the goal was, even though he used Man on the Moon. And I think that when we think of goals, we got to think of, if we put a goal out, will people understand it? And will they be able to understand where their part in that goal plays? If they can't, then the goal really isn't much good, unless we say, well, that department just doesn't need that. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of us who play together. We just don't always talk together. Conservation, planning, open space. I mean, you go through them, affordable housing, they all interrelate.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'll feed back through Liz and see, and maybe you'll see the value or you won't. We can share it and talk some more.
All right. So we want to think about our goals, and then Liz, do you think, what for a timeline? Next meeting, or maybe like the second meeting, is to get into this again and try to really nail it down with what we want to have for our goals?
Yeah, I think it takes a meeting or two. I remember we had an all-day meeting that, this is going way back, Paul Scribner, when he was moderator, took us off-site to an off-day meeting. We had every department involved to work through this kind of thing. Took quite a while to get, took a month or two before we were finally at a place where everybody could say, okay, now we get it.
Well, does 2 weeks give you guys enough time to come up with some goals that you'd like to bring forward?
I can certainly put my thoughts on paper, sure.
Does that, Mark, 2 weeks give you enough time?
Sure.
We can put it on for the next one maybe, and then if we're able to wrap it up then, great. Or if you need another meeting, then.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, and thank you, Liz, for putting that together. All right, next item on the agenda is an appointment for Brian Rhodes, who looks like he's going to be serving the town as a part-time police officer. So I'll make a motion that we appoint Brian Rhodes, part-time police officer through June 30th, 2023. We have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Trainer?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. Okay. All right, Bree, how about warrants paid?
Hello. I was
Hello.
muted, sorry. I am. Hold on. Can you pass over me for a minute? I don't know where my post-it
Sure.
went.
Okay.
Oh,
All
I got it. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. I got it. $14,320.74. Which
right.
is, we had all the Eversource bills. And we had some attorney bills. And Kingston Florist. We had 2 attorney bills, which were quite high. So,
Okay.
legal. Okay.
Thank you, Liz, or Bree. All right, Liz, how about town administrator updates?
So we've had a little bit of movement with that opioid settlement that town council had us sign on to. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work yet and when or how much in funds will be distributed to the communities who are part of it. So more to come on that. I'm in the process of registering us for a SAM.gov entity ID. The federal government, for certain things, it seems like they're moving away from a DUNS number and want people to have this separate entity ID. I do have a request into the clerk's office right now to get a little bit of information from back when we were incorporated. Some of the items that you can use to prove when the town was incorporated really are not applicable to us. So I'm working on that. I just don't want it to delay us receiving our second ARPA disbursement. I did read on their website that I think they've been flooded with requests for these entity IDs. So that seems like there's a big waiting list. And I'm not sure how the timing of that plays into that second ARPA funds disbursement. Our first disbursement came right around this time last year. So we're working on that. I also have been working with the fire department, and we just put out for bid a new invitation for bids for the work on Engine 1. If you recall, the money was appropriated at town meeting, not this past town meeting, but the one prior to that, and that was to refurbish Engine 1 and bring it up to today's standards. And at that time, the project just wasn't feasible. The one bid we got in was really high. So the chief has reconfigured the project, went back to the drawing board, and we put together a new set of bid documents. So that's out there now, and we're expecting bids in by mid-August. So we're fingers crossed that it comes in at a reasonable amount and we're able to get started on that. And then we also have a bid out currently that I assisted the highway department with for our paving services contract. So hoping we can move forward with that soon. Additionally, the order was placed last week for the solar powered speed signs. So that's 4 of those that were funded at town meeting. The company seems like they've been good to work with so far. They honored their quote that they had provided to us back before town meeting, even though, as we know, the cost of everything has gone up. So it appears that we can afford all 4 of the signs that we wanted initially. And they're going to work with Rob Furlot as far as the information for getting onto the cloud. It seems like they're really neat as far as technology is concerned. I think you can gather data about average speeds and number of vehicles and things like that. So we might be able to use it for further traffic control measures down the line. So I think it might provide some interesting information. And then otherwise, we're waiting on a couple pending grant applications. I haven't heard anything yet about our latest Green Communities application. They did reach out at one point for additional information, which our friends at OCPC helped us provide. But I haven't heard anything on that one yet. And there's also one that we were pursuing for the fire department for almost like an ATV, but a little bit different than an ATV, kind of a cross between a truck and an ATV. So we'll see where all of that goes and where it leads. And then for correspondence, we have 2 use of town property requests. The first one, which kind of ties in with my updates, this is from the Plympton Public Library from Mike Slauson. And he is moving forward with coordinating the National Night Out for Plympton on August 12th. It will be held at Holt Field, also utilizing the townhouse parking, the library parking, and the police department parking. It would be from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And we're planning to have food trucks, field games, a band. The Semlet canine unit is going to come, the police motorcycle unit. I think the highway department may have some fun equipment on display. So it really seems like it's going to be a fun evening for people. So we're working on that, and Mike Slauson's doing a fantastic job putting everything together. This is really his event. It was his idea, and he's brought everybody together. I sat in on a meeting briefly about it, and the fire department's on board. They're doing a bunch of stuff. So it seems like it's going to be really good. But that said, we would need you to vote for the use of town property for that.
I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be a wonderful time for the town.
I hope we promote the heck out of it because it does sound fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, any questions or concerns?
Party on.
Okay. All right. I'll make a motion that we authorize Mike Slauson and the Plympton Public Library to organize the National Night Out and to use the Holt Field, the Town Hall parking lot, the library parking lot for this event to be held from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. on August 12th. With all the approvals from the other boards as required.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Mr. Trainer.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. All right, so I can stop by and sign that because I think we've got some documents that we need to sign for you too up
Yes.
there, Liz.
Yes.
Okay, and then you've got a second one.
Yes, so this is for a wedding ceremony to be held at the gazebo on August 13th at 4:30 PM. And they would like to put up some decorations, and they will take the decorations down immediately after the ceremony, an hour later at 5:30 PM.
And Liz, we don't need any insurance or anything like that for these type of activities?
It's
We have not in the
debatable.
past.
I'll let Bree take that one.
Okay,
We haven't in the past. It's been small. I believe this is really going to be both their families. It's the Bouchard family that used to live up on, was that Brook, not off of Brook there, going towards the highway.
Spring Street.
Thank you.
Yep.
Used to live right next to the power line.
There's no food being served.
Nothing.
It's not, I think it's relatively small in the grand scheme of things. Can't imagine that it's anything above and beyond what could happen in the normal course of business.
You know,
And they also said they're going to park at the library. I mean, not the library, excuse me, the church.
okay.
But there was no parking on the street.
It would be nice if we could add on the form 2 lines, because we say insurance required. It'd be nice if we had insurance supplied, yes, no, or waived. And if it's waived, we just put a reason. I mean, if we're going to vote on
I could
these,
do that, sure.
I'm all in favor of this.
I'll amend the form.
Okay, Mark, are you okay with this?
I am okay.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion that we authorize Marielle Bouchard to use the gazebo in the town green on 6/29. And I don't remember what the time was.
August 13th.
August 13th.
I'm sorry,
August
August 13th. Thank you. All right, thanks. August 13th at 4:30, and they think they'll be done about 5:30 and taking down all the decorations then. So I'll make a motion that we authorize them to use those, the gazebo and the town green for a wedding ceremony, provided they get all the other necessary sign-offs. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. All right. Very good. So we're on to minutes. So Bree sent us out the minutes. Thank you very much from 6/6 and 6/27. Any questions or concerns about the minutes?
I had a couple. 6/6 looked good as far as I was concerned. 6/27 also looked good, but there were several abbreviations in there that probably have to be spelled out the first time they're presented. For example, on the first page, URP and DHCD and ATM, and on the second page, RDA and DPW.
I agree wholeheartedly. It drives me crazy with these acronyms because I don't know them.
Right.
You know, we get so much legal stuff that after a while it's just mumbo jumbo.
Bree, I can help you with those.
That'll be fine. I will spell them out for you.
Perfect. All right. And if there's any you don't know, because you probably know what all of them are, the one you may not know is the Urban Renewal Plan. That's the URP.
I thought that was a time zone.
Christine, I read through the June 6th one on the Borrego Solar.
Yep.
And you felt comfortable with the way that's written? Because quite frankly, I couldn't remember all that.
It sounded good to me that.
Okay. That's all I want to know. Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes from 6/6 as written. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Mr. Trainer.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes of 6:27 with the amendment that all of the acronyms are spelled out the first time that they're used. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mrs. Joy, yes. Okay. All right, rants and raves. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I'm glad to go first. I was going to do a little riff on a Bob Dylan lyric. It's a never-ending battle for a peace that is always torn, and then go on and talk about the title, which is Shelter from a Storm, and something about projects and priorities. But that all seemed kind of long-winded and non-sequitorial. And as we agreed on the use of the town green for the wedding, that seemed so sweet that potentially that green's been used for 400 years for that kind of ceremony. So my rave is for weddings on the town green and use of town property in a sweet and historical way.
So my rave, I was reading the Plympton Halifax Express, and I'm always disappointed when there's no news from Plympton. But then I step back and think, we are so lucky to have a small town newspaper when other towns, much larger towns, are destroying their newspapers. They're just going out of business, and it's unfortunate. So I have a rave for the Plympton Halifax Express, as long as they give more time to Plympton.
And the pictures are lovely.
I love the pictures.
Yeah, they're great. It was interesting on the request to use town property that Marielle has moved out of town, and that she would want to come back to Plympton for her wedding is even more special. So they lived here for quite a long time. She's a very sweet girl and a very nice family. So that's nice that she's coming back. My rave is for you, Mark, for hanging in there at our last meeting and finally getting us there for that Zoom. We were texting back and forth thinking we were going to have to reschedule, and it wasn't pretty, but we got there. So thank you for not giving up. And then it makes us always appreciate Liz too.
Yeah. The little corollary or subsequent thing of that is all the Zoom meetings I've signed in for the last week has me labeled as Liz Dennehy. And through all the different motifs that are my life at Zoom, they all wanted to know who Liz was, and they were worried about my relationship status and
oh my gosh, that's funny. All right. So our next meeting will be in 2 weeks. That's on July 25th, followed by 8/8. So being that we've got no other business ahead of us, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night, everyone.
Yahoo.